What's up everyone, and today I'm going to be making another video relating to Survivor, and this time I'm going to be making my analysis on the preview of Survivor 48, which if you don't know, the cast has been released, and usually other YouTubers do those cast assessments, which I like, but for me, I want to do something a little different here. Instead of making a cast assessment video, which I would normally conjunction with my review, I'm going to make an assessment on some of the cast based on the preview we got from the Survivor 47 finale. So what I'm going to go through here is react to the Survivor 48 preview and then give my analysis on what we saw and how we're supposed to perceive some of the cast members based on the confessionals that was shown to us. And just a little quick warning, because Survivor is obviously pre-filmed, the players who are shown are what seems to be what the show's trying to tell us are significant to the story of the season. So there are potential spoilers based on how I'm going to analyze the preview. And also, another thing I'm going to point out is that usually in these previews, the players will be shown in the first few challenges, usually from the marooning to the second immunity challenge, which because when we analyze which players make it to the second immunity challenge, it does give us analyzers a little sense of who is potentially out in the first round because they're not present in the second challenge. So just a little heads up with that in case you don't want to be spoiled on certain players' longevities. So with that, I'm going to be breaking down everything that was shown in the Survivor 48 preview, so let's get right into it. So we first start off with a usual scenic view of Fiji, which the site itself was shown as a bit of a silhouette during dawn. Then we get a voiceover which appears to be coming from Joe Hunter, and he's saying that Survivor has been calling him for a long time and he just wasn't listening. Which Joe does actually get two confessionals in this preview, and the first one doesn't really give us much about him, but more so about what the potential story theme this season has, which could be about how Survivor has been calling these players and it is time to make their mark. After that, we just cut to some shots of the Fijian Islands, then we get a brief scene of one of the tribes in their boats, which is the Logi tribe, with a voiceover from a man saying "I can feel it," which based on this preview, it felt like the Logi tribe is going to be one of the more important and complex tribes of the season, and it feels like the show is trying to give us the impression to root for this tribe mainly. Then next up, we are introduced to Stephanie, where she has a confessional that talks about how many people have the wrong impression of her, where they assume that she's going to be reading their tarot cards. But in the reality, she actually has led $100 million projects for her company, which based off the impression we're trying to get from Stephanie, she seems like a player that is going to have a lot of impressions on her, which could be a good thing but also could be a bad thing, so it's a double-edged sword. I just think for the tone of the way that she's being promoted, it seems like more on the positive side in that she is going to be a very competent player, so we'll see how it goes for her. Next, this is Camilla, and in her confessional, she talks about how her family senses that she'll be the first boot and share multiple reasons why she would. Which based on this, it's clearly spoiling that Camilla will not be the first boot, since why would they make it so blatant? But also, it seems that Camilla will be having a journey of being underestimated in this game, because even her family is underestimating her ability. So she's someone that is pretty interesting to watch out for. Then we've got Star, who's already showing off her lively personality, which I'm having a lot of fun with. And in her confessional, she talks about how Jeff seemed to be directly talking to her when he was asking people to apply, which that itself shows that she's going to be a very overtly fun presence on the show, which I'm looking forward to. And then for some unique context, there's a site called Inside Survivor where they release a rumored cast after the season finishes filming. However, this cast in particular was so hard for Inside Survivor to find that by the season preview, there were some players who didn't even have an image of them, but we did get remnants of their description, and which one of them was Star, whose name was found, but we never got an image of her. So it was pretty unique for the promo to highlight her, considering she was one of the last few people to be found. Then we just cut to a few shots of usual things we would see on Survivor, like someone striking on a flint, and then another shot of a tribe's boat, this time the Vulub tribe. And then our next player we're introduced to is Kevin, who just talks about having confidence in his ability for this game, claiming how he's fit physically and mentally for it, but then he's disrupted by a tiny fly which somehow frightens him, and he's like, whoa, is that a fly? And the confessional just abruptly ends right there before he can continue. Which based off of this, it seems like Kevin is going to be another hilarious figure on this season. However, it's really uncertain if it's going to be on his own right or circumstances around him. I am hoping for the former because I do like Kevin and I want him to stand out a lot from this season. After that, we just cut to the usual scenes of all the tribes competing in the challenges, and sound bites from Jeff Probst saying that 18 strangers have answered a call for the adventure of a lifetime, which is kind of following up to Joe's first confessional about calling, which is really playing into the theme this season is pushing for. Then we are introduced to the most intriguing player of them all, Shaheen, someone who was an alternate for Survivor 46, which many of the players mentioned about him a lot, referring to Beard Guy or by Jelinski's language, Esty. And so it's great to see him in action for this season, and based on his confessional, he seems poised to play this game really hard, where he describes that his power is to play people just like Mozart playing his piano keys, which I do like how there's a piano tune played by the end of his confessional, which I hope is a good sign for his potential this season. And like I mentioned, he's the one that I'm the most intrigued to watch for, and I am hoping he does well and makes his mark on the season. Then we just continue cutting to shots of the players in the challenges, with another soundbite from Jeff saying the phrase, "They must learn to adapt or they'll be voted out," which we've heard that phrase so many times in the same tone of voice, so it's certain that the audio was recycled just for the sake of promoting this season. Then the next player we cut to is David, who talks about the story of his muscle gain, which was all from chocolate milk. And my impression from this confessional is that David is probably going to be a challenge beast, someone who's physically fit and muscular, which will make him more of an easy target around the merge phase. Afterwards, we just cut to some close-up shots of most of the players, with another soundbite from Jeff acknowledging that only one will claim the $1 million prize by the end of it, which us longtime Survivor fans know that. Nextly, we get another player introduction, who is Eva, and she openly talks about being autistic, which is nice of her to come out as, and share about her experience with autism as her background. And I do like that Eva says that she looks at it as a gift, which has led her to take part in multiple positions, which doesn't scare her at all, which shows the bravery Eva has, and it gives off the impression that she's going to be a player that's willing to take risks, because she says it does not scare her at all to do anything that is very hefty. Then for the last few bits of the preview, we get a shot of a player collapsing during the marooning challenge, which, based on who I've analyzed, that player was Mary, who I'm obviously going to be rooting for, and I'm psyched to see her in action. And don't worry, Mary was seen in the first immunity challenge, so she's not going to get medevaced at the marooning, so don't worry about that. However, this show just loves to promote people's injuries for some reason, I guess for more dramaticness about the elements of Survivor. But anyways, Mary just collapses and Jeff halting the challenge to call for medical. Then we cut to Jeff Probst at Tribal saying this is a historic moment, which initially did throw me off guard since he was wearing the same outfit at the Survivor 47 after show. So I initially thought this was a piece from it, but it seems like it isn't, and it's actually making me more excited for the season based off how Jeff is describing it at Tribal. And then our final confessional, which is Joe's second one, and this time it's not fully a voiceover and we actually see him talking in a confessional, mentioning how he's a single father who wants his kids to reflect on his experience, being proud of him. Which in terms of my impression of it, it seems that Joe is going to be a very central player this season, someone who has an established storyline coming into the season, so he's probably an important player to look out for. And lastly, our final shots of just the players enduring the insanity of these challenges, with a voiceover from Jeff saying, "I like it," and we cut to the Survivor 48 logo on a flag. So, for my overall takeaways from this, I think it's an alright preview, just a generic one considering we're in a new era where there's no themes, so there really isn't much special thing that the show can promote off of. Which I mean, coming from the last two seasons, they tried to do something different with their promos, where for 46, they used the players' audition videos, which was unique to see, but also wasn't really the greatest idea for a preview. And then for 47, it was a week into filming, so they used a visual of Steelman crafting their logo as part of their promotion. So for this season, it didn't really have anything like that. Anyways, we did get a good chunk of some players who were highlighted in the promo, which this would usually narrow down the potential winner because they're normally among those who were highlighted in the season preview. Even though someone like Rachel didn't get highlighted in her season's preview, that's because obviously I just mentioned the preview had to air while the season was 1 week into filming, so they wouldn't have known the story of the season or else Rachel would have had a highlight. But anyways, this has become the trend in modern Survivor, and it can come off as a bit spoilery to those who assess the preview more analytically. And lastly, for my takeaway, I think based on the confessionals we got, this cast seems to be very compelling, where many of them seem ready to play the game of Survivor and make some good TV at the same time. And talking about confessionals, One thing I want to make note of is the fact that mostly confessionals that were shown in season previews aren't actually shown on the season themselves. Like for example, Brendan Dolan from Survivor 45 had a confessional in a preview talking about his grandfather robbing a bank, but when the season aired, that confessional was never shown. Which, although I sometimes find it weird, it is pretty reasonable since we already got a sense of what they said and we don't want to see it repeated on our screens again, so I understand that notion. So overall, I think the preview was alright, but I do think the cast is very exciting, and I hope to see how the season plays out and maintain a really good streak of seasons of Survivor. If I were to get my top 4, I would pick someone like Camilla and Kevin, and then another person I would pick would probably be Mary because I like her, and the next person I'm going to pick, the final one, is probably that's going to be my winner pick, which is Shaheen, because I think after knowing that he's the 46th alternate, it would be an interesting story. So with that, I appreciate you all tuning in to me analyzing the Survivor 48 preview and assessing the cast based off of it. And I think I'm going to do a similar style of video with Australian Survivor, which the newest season is coming soon. So I'm going to be working on that. So this wraps up my coverage for this topic, and I thank you all tuning in.